The chess piece slid across the board with a soft click. "Checkmate," I whispered, my heart thundering in my chest as I looked up at Victoria Reeves, CEO of Reeves Enterprises and arguably the most intimidating woman I'd ever met. Her eyes widened, scanning the board in disbelief. 3 moves. That's all it had taken. Impossible, she murmured, her perfectly manicured finger hovering over her fallen king. I should have been focused on her reaction, on the fact that I'd just beaten the corporate chess prodigy who'd made that ridiculous proposal in the first place. Instead, all I could think about was my daughter Emma, waiting at daycare, and how I was already running late. This wasn't how I'd planned to end my job interview. If you're enjoying this story of an unexpected chess match that changed everything, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content that will warm your heart and keep you on the edge of your seat. 6 months earlier, my world had collapsed when my wife died shortly after giving birth to our daughter. I became a single father overnight, trying to balance grief, a newborn, and a career that suddenly seemed insignificant compared to the tiny human who depended on me for everything. I still remember that morning clearly. Emma had been fussy all night, teething pain keeping both of us awake until dawn finally broke. I'd managed to get her down for a nap just long enough to shower and prepare for what was possibly the most important job interview of my life. Financial director at Reeves Enterprises, a position that would provide the stability Emma and I desperately needed. "Mr. Parker, Miss Reeves will see you now," the receptionist announced, her voice cutting through my sleep-deprived haze. I straightened my navy suit jacket, took a deep breath, and walked into Victoria Reeves's office. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city skyline, but they paled in comparison to the woman sitting behind the imposing glass desk. At 40 Victoria, Reeves had built her father's modest company into a corporate empire. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and her gray suit screamed power and precision. "Daniel Parker," she said, not looking up from my resume. "Princeton, MBA from Stanford, 7 years at Goldman. Impressive. Thank you, Ms. Reeves." She finally looked up, her green eyes assessing me with clinical detachment. "Your references are excellent. Your qualifications exceed requirements. But I'm curious about this 6-month gap in your employment." I swallowed hard. My wife passed away after childbirth. I took time off to care for our daughter. Something flickered across her face, surprise, perhaps even a hint of compassion, before her professional mask slipped back into place. "I'm sorry for your loss. That must be challenging." "Every day," I admitted. "But Emma, my daughter, she's worth every sacrifice." Victoria nodded, then gestured to a chess set displayed on a side table. "Do you play?" The question caught me off guard. "Chess? Yes, since childhood." A small smile played at her lips as she stood and moved toward the chess table. "I find chess reveals more about a person than any interview question. Would you indulge me?" I followed her to the table, wondering if this was some kind of corporate mind game. My father had taught me chess when I was 5, and we'd played nearly every day until his death when I was in college. It was our connection, our language. Victoria took white, naturally. "Let's make this interesting, Mr. Parker," she said, arranging her pieces. "Beat me in chess and the job is yours." I nodded, focusing on the board rather than the pressure building in my chest. "In fact," she continued, her voice taking on an almost playful tone that seemed at odds with her reputation, "beat me in chess and I'll marry you." My head snapped up, certain I'd misheard. "Excuse me?" She laughed, the sound surprisingly warm. "It's a joke, Mr. Parker. No one has beaten me in 15 years. It's my little way of saying the job is yours if you can impress me." She moved her pawn to E4. "Your move." I stared at the board, my mind racing. This was more than a game now, it was Emma's future. I responded with the Sicilian defense, my father's favorite opening. Victoria raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting such an aggressive response. We exchanged a few moves in silence, each of us studying the other's strategy. Then I saw it, a pattern my father had taught me, a trap few people recognized until it was too late. 3 moves later, her king was cornered. "Checkmate," I said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Victoria stared at the board, then at me, her expression unreadable. Finally, she stood and extended her hand. "Congratulations, Mr. Parker. The job is yours." I shook her hand, relief washing over me. "Thank you, Ms. Reeves." "Victoria," she corrected. "And about that other promise." A smile tugged at her lips. "I suppose I should at least buy you dinner first." I laughed, assuming she was continuing the joke. "I should warn you, I come as a package deal these days. I look forward to meeting her," Victoria replied, and something in her tone made me wonder if she was still joking at all. That chess game changed everything. Within weeks, Victoria had not only welcomed me into the company, but had implemented a corporate daycare program after learning about my childcare struggles. She claimed it was good business, a way to attract and retain talented parents, but I caught her visiting the facility often, particularly when Emma was there. Our professional relationship evolved into friendship. Victoria was nothing like the ice queen the business world made her out to be. She was brilliant, yes, and demanding of excellence, but also surprisingly funny and compassionate. She began joining Emma and me for dinner, first under the pretense of discussing work, then simply because she enjoyed our company. Emma adored her. At 6 months old, my daughter would light up whenever Victoria entered the room, reaching for her with chubby hands and delighted giggles. And Victoria, to my continual amazement, transformed around Emma, her corporate armor falling away to reveal a natural warmth I suspected few people ever saw. "She has your eyes," Victoria commented one evening as she cradled Emma in her arms. We were in my modest apartment, takeout containers scattered across the coffee table. "And her mother's smile," I added softly. Victoria looked up at me. "Do you want to talk about her, your wife?" No one had asked me that before. Everyone either avoided the subject entirely or offered platitudes about time healing all wounds. But Victoria asked, and somehow, I found myself telling her everything. How Sarah and I had met in college, our dreams for the future, the complications that arose during childbirth, and the devastating hours that followed. "She never even got to hold Emma," I finished, my voice breaking. "That's what haunts me the most." Victoria reached across the sofa and took my hand, her touch grounding me. "Emma will know her through you, Daniel, through your stories and your love." That night marked another shift in our relationship. Victoria became more than a friend. She became part of our small family. She taught me to navigate the corporate world while I showed her the joy in building block towers and singing nonsensical lullabies. 3 months after that chess game, Victoria invited us to her penthouse for dinner. Emma was asleep in the portable crib Victoria had purchased specifically for our visits, and we were enjoying a glass of wine on her balcony. "I have a confession," Victoria said suddenly, looking out at the city lights rather than at me. "Should I be worried?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That day, in my office, I let you win." I set down my wine glass. "The chess game? No, you didn't. I've been playing chess since I was 4, Daniel. I'm a grandmaster. I saw your trap 3 moves before you executed it." I stared at her, confused. "Why would you let me win?" Victoria finally turned to face me. "Because I saw something in you during that interview. Something I'd been looking for without even realizing it. When you talked about Emma, about becoming a single father, I saw someone who had faced the worst life could throw at him and still showed up, still fought for what mattered. So you gave me the job out of pity?" I felt a flicker of anger. "No," she said firmly. "I gave you the job because you're brilliant at what you do. I let you win the chess game because—" She hesitated. "Because I wanted to see what kind of man you were in victory. Most men who beat me, on the rare occasions when it happens legitimately, become insufferable. They preen and posture. You just worried about being late to pick up your daughter." I wasn't sure how to respond to that. "So that joke about marrying me?" Victoria laughed, but there was a nervousness to it I'd never heard before. Not my smoothest moment. In my defense, I never expected to actually like you so much. The implication of her words hung in the air between us. I thought about the past 3 months, how Victoria had become essential to Emma and me, how I found myself thinking about her during quiet moments, how her smile had become something I looked forward to each day. "I should check on Emma," I said, suddenly needing space to process this revelation. Victoria nodded, understanding in her eyes. Of course. I stood by the crib, watching my daughter sleep peacefully, her tiny chest rising and falling. What would Sarah want for us? The question had haunted me since her death. Looking at Emma, I knew the answer. Happiness, love, family. When I returned to the balcony, Victoria was still standing at the railing, her back to me. I moved beside her, our shoulders almost touching. I have a confession too, I said quietly. I knew you let me win. She turned to me, surprise evident on her face. How? Because I've studied your chess tournaments. I knew your reputation before I walked into that interview. The Victoria Reeves I researched would never have fallen for such an obvious trap. A slow smile spread across her face. So we've both been lying. Not about the things that matter, I replied, taking her hand in mine. That night changed everything again. Victoria and I began dating, taking things slowly for Emma's sake and our own. We had both experienced loss. Victoria's parents had died when she was in college, leaving her to raise her younger brother and take over the family business. We understood the weight of responsibility, the fear of loving someone when you knew how quickly they could be taken away. But we also understood the joy of finding someone who saw you completely and loved you anyway. 6 months after our first chess game, I stood in Victoria's office. Our office, as the company had grown enough to require both our expertise. Emma was in my arms, babbling happily as she played with my tie. Victoria watched us from across the room, that warm smile I'd come to love lighting up her face. I have something for you, she said, approaching us with a small box in her hand. I raised an eyebrow. Another corporate gift? The last one was a monogrammed calculator. She laughed. Not exactly. She opened the box to reveal a chess piece, a white king. I thought we could start a new game. I looked from the chess piece to Victoria's face, understanding dawning. Are you proposing to me with a chess piece? Beat me in chess and I'll marry you, she quoted herself, her voice soft. You did. I'm just making good on my promise. She took a deep breath. I love you, Daniel. I love Emma. I want us to be a family, officially. Emma chose that moment to reach for Victoria, nearly lunging out of my arms. Victoria took her, holding her close as she looked at me expectantly. You know, I said, taking the chess piece from the box, most people get down on one knee for this sort of thing. Victoria rolled her eyes. When have I ever done anything the conventional way? I laughed, joy bubbling up inside me. Fair point. I stepped closer, wrapping my arm around both of them. Yes, Victoria Reeves, I'll marry you. The kiss we shared, with Emma squished happily between us, felt like the beginning of something extraordinary. A new game, with new rules, and a family forged not from obligation but from choice. 1 year later, our wedding day arrived. It was a small ceremony in Victoria's, our penthouse, with Emma toddling down the makeshift aisle, scattering flower petals everywhere except where they were supposed to go. Victoria's brother gave her away, and my best friend from college stood as my best man. During our vows, Victoria surprised me by pulling out a familiar chess piece, the white king from her proposal. When you beat me at chess that day, you didn't just win a game or a job. You showed me that sometimes the most unexpected moves lead to the most beautiful outcomes. I pulled out my own surprise, the black queen I'd captured during our first game, and you taught me that sometimes letting yourself be captured is the bravest move of all. As we exchanged rings and promises, with Emma babbling happily in the arms of Victoria's assistant, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From grief to hope, from loneliness to family. Life isn't a game you can win or lose. It's a series of moves, some planned, some desperate, all leading to moments that define us. My greatest move wasn't checkmating Victoria Reeves in 3 turns. It was opening my heart to the possibility of loving again, of building a new family from the ashes of what I'd lost. And as Victoria became my wife and Emma's mother, I knew with absolute certainty that this was a game worth playing, with opponents turned partners and a future full of possibilities neither of us could have imagined when we first sat down at that chessboard. Sometimes, the most unexpected challenges lead to the most beautiful victories. And sometimes a simple game of chess can change everything. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more content that celebrates love, family, and the unexpected ways our lives can change in an instant. Remember, every ending is just the beginning of something new.